Good morning. My name is Kevin Caldwell. I am the Southeast Legislative Manager for Marijuana Policy Project. It is an honor for me to host this first group of incredible Texas advocates. I think it's awesome that Texas A&M has given or allowing us to use this room this weekend. It's incredibly important for everybody, but specifically the veterans of our country are really benefiting from cannabis as medicine. So thank you for Texas A&M to do this. I'd like to start by introducing some of the great people on our panel, and I'm just going to go from my left to right. Austin, could you please introduce what the Texas Cannabis Collective does and what y'all have been doing?
Yeah, my name's Austin Zamhariri. I'm the executive director of the Texas Cannabis Collective. We're a 501c4 nonprofit here in the state of Texas. Our mission is dedicated to awareness, news media, grassroots advocacy, and premier events, contributing to ones very much like this. And not just that, but I'm also a store manager at Thrive Apothecary in Fort Worth, where we are attached to Thrive Medical Cannabis, and we do prescriptions for Texas Compassionate Use Program, as well as sell hemp cannabinoid product that is ethically sourced and radically transparent. So thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Fantastic. Piper, if you could talk about your advocacy work.
So my name is Piper Lindeen. I have been advocating since late 2014. What got me into advocacy was my son has severe epilepsy, severe refractory epilepsy, and he is a cannabis patient. So I'm very passionate about advocacy. I went to University of Maryland School of Pharmacy for the MCST program, and stepped up to the federal level for advocacy as well. So I'm involved here in Texas and on the federal level. I'm currently working on making a documentary showcasing, so it's our family doing a road trip to DC to participate in an advocacy day, and we're stopping to talk to patients along the way. So the goal is to bring the story of the difficulty of medicating with cannabis because of the backlog on research and the inadequate education for healthcare professionals that's out there, that kind of leaves patients fending for themselves for the most part with cannabis. So the hope is to get the message out there that patients still don't have what they need anywhere in the world, basically, because of this backlog on science. And I have worked alongside these guys for a long, long time here in Texas, and I appreciate all of the opportunity with Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy for coordinating all the things in Texas and helping us to make progress.
Chase, if you could please introduce yourself and both your personal advocacy as well as the organization you work with.
Yeah, so my name is Chase Bearden. I'm the executive director of the Coalition of Texans with Disabilities. We've been around since 1978. A lot of the work we do is access-based, and that could be to transportation, education, healthcare. And we got involved with this long ago when we had some of the mamas, the parents that originally came to us asking if we would help them try and pass a bill in Texas that would allow some kind of medical cannabis for their children that were dealing with seizures. And I still remember that day when they came in and we all sat down and my boss was sitting next to me. And after they left, we both looked at each other and go, oh my gosh, in Texas, I don't know how this is going to work. Lo and behold, we're sitting here at A&M now talking about it. My parents have accepted it. It's I think there's been a lot of changes in this area, and there's still a lot of work to do. I know my organization does a lot of work in the Capitol across all these issue areas, so we get to spend a lot of time advocating on different areas. For me personally, the whole time we were advocating for it, after being in a chair for almost 30 years, you deal with pain a lot from sitting, So I was actually taking hydrocodone every day. I was getting $180 a month for $10. That was the first thing that a doctor would prescribe you. So for me, I kind of had this period in my life where I was actually advocating for other people for this, going to Colorado and getting stuff to bring back to work my way off of hydrocodone at the time. And I still think it's the main thing that helped me finish getting off of that medication. And now I'm not having to take either one. So it's made a big difference in my life. And I think it does in others. I look at it as a medicine like we should, just like any other medicine. Some things work for some people, other things work better. This is another tool in the toolbox that allows people choice.
Thank you. The first question that I want to post to the panel is about advocacy. I think a lot of the people that are here at the conference either has already been involved with advocacy at either the federal or the state level or both, as in Piper's case. But the fact is we are at the forefront of change. It is up to us to educate our legislators. It's up to us to be a unified, common sense voice, meeting legislators where they are. But you're lucky here to hear from three voices with intense experience in Austin. And I want to make sure that each of them gets the opportunity to talk about the lessons and pitfalls that they've experienced in trying to be an effective advocate at the Capitol. And I will use the term advocate because that to me means a certain level of professionalism. And we've all seen, both in the 15 states that I run, what happens in state legislatures when effective advocates are not the main voice. And so I think it's very important that we make sure that effective advocates provide a united front. But I'm going to start with Chase and work our way down this way on this one. So sorry, Chase, I'm going to punt right to you to talk about the lessons that you've learned in dealing in Austin and the state capitol.
Yeah. So, I think every state does things differently. We aren't allowed to do a ballot and get it put into the legislature. Our legislature decides what bills they're hearing. And we have a very conservative power structure within the legislature. And for years, I think there was always pushback from many in it around cannabis because it had a stigma. There still is a pushback against it. And I think when you're working with legislators, and it doesn't matter on this piece of legislation or issue, it can be any of them. You're dealing with 150 legislators that all have different opinions. Some of them in their normal lives may be the owners of a car dealership and not be dealing with anything else. They may own a ranch and have no idea how this issue affects people. And so you have to go in and kind of check your opinions about a lot of things at the door. And you need to spend that time, communicating with them. And I think it's, you always want to be able to meet somebody halfway, but I think it's more closer to their halfway than yours, because they're the ones who are actually making the decisions and have the vote. So I think within our legislature, the thing I've learned the most is taking the time to, try and understand the person you're going to talk to first. If you do know that they are completely against something, you don't want to reinforce any of the negative things they may be thinking. You want to go in and spend that time and show them that, the old stereotype of someone that uses cannabis is not going to get off the couch or that they're committing crimes. You want them to see you're a family member, you're a person that works a full-time job taking care of your family, you're a responsible person. It's good advocacy. You want them to see the positive sides of it no matter what. But that takes time. And I know the one thing that I've argued back and forth with many in our community at different times in the Capitol is that, dress like you're going there to impress someone. Like as your grandparents might have said, you're going to church, put on church clothes. If you're showing up to the Capitol, leave the big cannabis flags at home. In a very conservative legislature, that doesn't help. You have to bring a level of professionalism in that building. And I know that can be sometimes, a lot of people in our community have a very libertarian, independent streak, and they want, there you go. But in the Capitol, you got to remember it's not us. We're advocating for everyone else around us to help them get there. So I think the biggest lesson I've learned is know who your audience is and speak to that audience and work with them.
Thank you. Piper?
So for me, I think that positive relationship building is critical, but I also say advocate at every opportunity. So I'm a dental hygienist by profession, and I think you all have been in a dental chair where you realize you're a captive audience. So I take advantage of that, right? So people can't open their mouth. Talk. I just tell them about my situation with my kids, and get people to empathize. But it doesn't matter the circumstance that you're in. You have an opportunity whenever it arises to be able to build those positive impressions about this. And I feel like, meet legislators, not just legislators, but all politicians and business owners and all kinds of different influencers in the community where they are. So I like to attend whatever events that I'm able to and come across my radar and build these opportunities. I actually, Pete Olson was doing some ridiculous kind of thing where he said, "We love our crossing guards." He made a little poster board at my kids' school. My husband and I walk our kids to school every day, and I hadn't even brushed my hair or my teeth yet. I probably still had my pajamas on. I was like, well, is this the opportunity? I want to dress to impress, but should I miss this opportunity? I haven't brushed my teeth yet. Well, I went and talked to him, and it ended up that was a really great experience. It ended up building. Now I see him in Lowe's and he's like, "Hey, how's it going? What's going on?" And he's retired now. But he does give me feedback on this is a good thing to advocate for. And I think this is a way. So you can get those little nuggets from people who are even retired from politics. And kind of build on those things. But then I've also had other opportunities where I reached out to our county sheriff, Troy Nels, who's now a member of Congress. And I have that relationship because I reached out to him and have attended his events, even though he was a sheriff and really didn't have anything except for, he wrote emails that said, "I support this," which is good. But now he's in a position where he could potentially sponsor legislation, and that relationship is there. It's a positive relationship where we've had, we've kind of built a friendship over the years. And so that's kind of how I think, have to think about it as something that you're building relationship. Yeah, there's an end goal, but you take and give positive things like you do in any relationship, and it'll carry you at some point to closer to that goal. And then advocate in every way possible. I don't know. I wrote a pilot for a TV show because I was thinking, whoa, how can I make change? I'm trying to work on making a documentary because we've got to put things in front of people's faces, because hearing the stories about patients are what brings the change. So sharing those stories is really important in whatever way you can. So I encourage all of you to come up with your story, have it ready, and share it at every opportunity.
And Piper's right. It's not a one-touch kind of thing. Advocacy is relationship building. Yeah. And for someone that's been against it for a long time, you really do need that multiple, touch kind of pattern, and where they start seeing you in different places, and it's not just constant pressure, and it's creating a friendship.
Yes.
Yeah.
Austin.
Oh, well, I've got a long journey with cannabis. In 2010, I was arrested for possession of marijuana under 2 ounces in the city of Grapevine. I spent a night in Grapevine jail and subsequently 5 days in Tim Curry Correctional in downtown Fort Worth. And so I got to really experience, the marijuana prohibition from a criminal justice standpoint. But really the crux of my story begins in 2016-ish when I visited Colorado. Legalization had just happened out there. And I fell in love with the cannabis industry. I visited every dispensary in Denver and in Pueblo and what existed in Trinidad at the time, and just absolutely fell in love with this industry. And I was a bartender by trade. And so I was like, oh man, I could easily sell weed all day, every day, and be happy with my life. And this epiphany happened, and I said, okay, man, now this is what I'm going to do. How hard can it be to legalize marijuana in Texas? And that led me to researching everything I could find out about the situation in Texas. At the time, Texas Compassionate Use had just passed the Texas Compassionate Use Act in 2015. And I actually happened to reside in the district of the woman who had led that initiative. And then also I began to learn about all of these nonprofits and organizations that were doing groundwork. It led me to my friend Heather Fazio, who was doing instrumental work at the Capitol, and who was organizing and bringing together a lot of people from all walks of life, all different interests and all different connections to the cannabis community. And it really taught me a lot about how to get engaged organizationally, how to promote yourself, how to practice good ethic, and how to move forward on this issue. I spent a lot of time in 2017 was my real first hard legislative session. And so I think for me, what it's all about is you got to get involved. You got to do something to get involved. And you're all in the right place, because clearly everybody here has some kind of interest in what's happening as far as cannabis law, regulation, where we've been, where we're at now, and where we're going, right? And so for me, I continued along this path through COVID. Eventually, I started my organization that's been complicit in helping with a lot of the local decriminalization efforts. My hometown, the city of Denton, was one of them. I've knocked doors in San Marcos, right here in College Station, Lubbock, Texas, all across the state of Texas. And I think really what I want to convey to you, and the evidence is right here with these two individuals as well, is that the power of one person is incredibly powerful. In this age that we're in, one person can make a national difference. As long as you continue to act locally within your network, your local community, continue to work with others across our state. We all know that Texas is really like 5 states in one. We're all different cultures, different ideas and beliefs and histories. And so it's incumbent on all of us to use that power, use our skills, use our ambitions in this industry and in this movement to continue to bring the synergy that we need to make these changes, because it's going to take literally every single person in this room and more to move this across the finish line. But I have good news. Look around you. These are very, very capable, incredible, wonderful people who are dedicated to making this change. We've been dedicated to it for 10 years, longer, and we're going to be dedicated to it for the rest of our lives. And so I just embrace sharing this journey with y'all, and never forget that you are very important, and continue to go down that path.
Can I add a little something to that? I just wanted to say, you touched on it a couple of times, but I think I wanted to bring a little bit more attention to it. So advocates a lot of times are doing things on their own nickel. And, to be honest, advocates are the reason change happens. So it's people knocking on doors and telling legislators what needs to happen. And not everybody has the capacity for being able to knock on doors. I don't know. Chase knocks on doors. I knock on doors. I have a special needs child. I've seen mamas who knock on doors with their autistic children. So these are people who don't have an easy time advocating, and yet we still advocate. And we advocate, I think, because we need it. Like, especially as a mother of a child, like we need to have change happen because our child's lives depend on it. So we appreciate your help in knocking on doors, or financial support for the organizations that support us or the efforts that we're putting into the advocacy. So that financial aspect is important also. But in whatever way that you can help, sending the text messages or the emails or going to these things in person or knocking on doors at Capitol, signing up for testimony on testimony days, or just financially supporting these organizations and individuals. It's all important to recognize what you can do and doing that, taking that action that needs to happen.
I think that brings up a great point in that we were talking about we want to meet influencers, we want to meet legislators where they are. At the same time, meet the advocates where they are too. You know, you may have people that are really dedicated that want to go knock on doors, or others that want to go to Austin and speak. Okay, and help them be the best that they can. But something that everybody in this room can do is be a registered voter. Not just a registered voter, but voting in every election. When you send that email to your state senator, to your state rep, their staff member is going to look to see if you are a registered voter, and you will find that they answer very quickly. If you are in Louisiana, they, believe it or not, call it a chronic voter, which I am incredibly proud to be known as that. But the fact is they want to know that you're engaging in the system, and but I mean, at the same time, this kind of segues into a great next question for the panel. And it's really about the challenges of advocacy. And I'm going to start with Piper on this one and go to Austin and then finish up with Chase. So Piper, would you like to talk about
Sure, yes.
the challenges that you face?
So I kind of already hit on the challenges and talking about like people who are advocates tends to be patients. I mean, there's a lot of people who are not patients who are advocates.
Oh, I'm a
too,
patient.
so. I mean, whatever. I mean, you consider yourself a patient, you know. But people with really difficult circumstances who are going there to do these things. And, you know, I've had to advocate. Well, I mean, I'm here now. Thankfully, I have family that is helping to take care of my son. But we're in difficult circumstances with him still dealing with seizures frequently. And, people with autistic kids. It's hard to know that you're working for something for your child to improve their life, and face roadblocks in that. Have a hard time getting people to see like how things could be better with changes, and having people resist that, I think, is really emotionally difficult. But refocusing yourself, I think, as an advocate and saying, well, you know, I have made a difference, just as everyone who has advocated has made a difference, because change doesn't just come like that. You know, it's changing people's minds, and sharing the stories again is so important in changing the perspectives that, you know, the hurdles are definitely there. The emotional hurdles of, I think, when you've spent a day knocking on doors at the Capitol, I don't know. I feel like I remember, I think it was 2021 where nothing happened, right? 2021. What was it? I can't remember. Anyways, I thought, okay, this is the end. I was at the Capitol and cried in several rooms. My son is a teacup registered patient, and you know, I thought there's no way if these changes don't happen, it's going to kill. And it was the last day of session, and everybody said, it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. I went home crying. I was crying the whole way home. And, you know, this is going to kill Texas Compassionate Use Program. And then what are we going to have if these companies can't sustain themselves with additional patients added? And so that was when PTSD was added. So they added PTSD, and but it was that afternoon. It was that afternoon. So I don't know. Maybe me crying in offices maybe made a difference. I don't know. I don't know. But yeah, so, you just got to do what you can and never give up, I guess, and keep your chin up, right?
Yeah.
Austin?
I think it's, for me, it's understanding there's expectation, which is right up here, high expectation, no pun intended, and political or real, reality of kind of where we are. And so you just got to understand that you're getting out there, you're making moves, you're starting a business, you're getting into advocacy, whatever you're doing in the cannabis space, you're going to take losses. Sometimes you're going to take big losses, and sometimes you're going to take controversial losses that don't make sense and make you question whether you're doing the right thing, whether you're in the right place, whether you made a good decision or not. It's going to make you cry. Seriously, it's going to make, trust me, go to a legislative session and come out the other side and see if you're not really emotional about what has happened.
Yeah.
For me, the biggest instance for us is, I think, our campaign in Lubbock to decriminalize in the heart of the reddest part of the state of Texas. And the team did an incredible job of getting that ballot initiative, 11,000 registered voters in about 6 weeks' time, to put that on the Lubbock ballot. And unfortunately, as popular as this issue is, as many times as we had, as these different ballot initiatives had won in Austin and Denton and Killeen, wherever, the numbers were really, really high, 70, 71%, 80%. So we had a lot of hope in Lubbock, and we lost that vote at 34%. We lost 34 to 66, and it was pretty overwhelming, 21,000 to 11,000. And it crushed me. This was back in May of earlier this year. The citizens of Lubbock decided in, heavy amounts that they did not want marijuana decriminalization in their city. And that's fair. And that's what the democratic process is for, and why we want to engage voters at the local level. But moral of the story is be patient, keep working, don't give up, because time is on our side. We are in the right places. We are the ones that are on the right side of history. And the proof is the leading Republican nominee for president of the United States has openly come out and said that people should not be going to jail for small amounts of marijuana. The first time in modern history that we've had a Republican presidential candidate vocalize that he supports legalization, he supports regulation, he supports people not going to jail. And that is the win that we get out of Lubbock. So just continue the course, and you will start to see those wins pile up and those losses drop a little and sting less.
Thank you. Chase?
So barriers, how much time do we have? So from a policy wonk side of dealing with all this and just personal relationships, Piper was referencing when we thought, that we weren't going to get it on the last day. So our Senate has very specific rules and timelines that things have to be moving or to a committee by the end to move forward. And I do remember us getting to the end, and honestly, I almost remember all of the lobbyists were like, it's done, it's not going to move forward. And there's one main rule in the Texas Senate, and that rule can be changed at any time. That's the main thing you have to remember. You're never out of time until that clock strikes 12. And I think between all of the people that did that last minute, I remember the night before that, I was actually testifying against multiple bills against Senator Hughes's in his committee on his specific bills, and I felt terrible. Because the next morning I was in front of his office early to grab him going in the door saying, you have to figure out how to make this happen. And I remember giving him my last bottle of hydrocodone that I had filled. I found it in a drawer. And I was like, here, this is what happened. This is what got me off of this stuff. And I think between all of the steps that we all take and being in the right place when that opportunity strikes is what helps you get through the barriers. But there's a lot of, I think, for families, you got to think about, especially business owners and those that are benefiting right now from having access to be able to sell in Texas and do the things they're doing, is that a lot of the families that were coming up there, knowing exactly what they went through day in and day out, being in the legislative process and sitting for a hearing that starts at 8 a.m. but doesn't end till midnight, and then you're back the next day, and you're lucky that you've listened to hundreds of people testify, finally gets to your name, and then they go, we're going to go on break and go to the floor. And 8 hours passes and you can't go anywhere. For some of these kids and parents that are up there, that's hard. It's hard on a family. It's hard on me, and I do it for a job and get paid. But there's a financial strain, an emotional strain on these people coming up to testify. And I think something that is always needed, even for our organization, financially, we really don't get supported much to do this. And it's hard. It's hard for us to cover everything else we do. I know it's hard for groups like y'all's and everything, is that, if you can't be up there to do that kind of work and to spend the time, support financially the groups that are doing it, it makes a big difference. I think for us, it'd be nice to get home before midnight, but I know during sessions, that's never going to happen. But the barriers come from, like this session, one of the big barriers coming, we have a big group of new people coming in. There was a lot of primaries. The Republican Party has its own battles within the party. These are kind of just things we have to deal with as we go through. And, one of our main champions got primaried out. There'll be others, but it takes years sometimes. And I think a lot of the legislation we work on across the board can take a decade. Then you got to get it implemented. So things can move fast when they do move, but it's being in the right place at the right time. And I think that's the biggest barrier.
And I think that's one of the points that I want to bring is that cannabis advocacy is a marathon. Yeah. It's not a sprint. You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your teammates. Okay, because you have to be able to lean on them. There's going to be times where you get so frustrated you're crying in the Capitol. Trust me, I've shed quite a few tears leaving the Louisiana Capitol over the years. And it's okay to take a break. Okay, if you get to the point that you're done, don't keep trying to push yourself just to push yourself. Have enough self-care to take care of yourself so that you can be an effective advocate for the next battle, because there always will be a battle. You've never lost the war. You've simply lost a battle. You take a nap, you shake it off, you get going. One of the only other things that I would like to mention that this esteemed group has not mentioned is be careful of the echo chamber of social media. Okay, if your advocacy organization is very dependent on social media, which many of us are and many of us utilize, check your analytics. If you're spending a lot of time on social media and you're working with an echo chamber of 100 people, you have to look at different ways to get your voice out, getting your message out to a wider audience. And, there's organizations like the Texans for Sensible Marijuana Policy. Okay. Everybody up on this council tab or whatever we're on here, however we'd like to describe it. Thank you. These are all excellent advocates that do not be, if you are flustered at the pace that the Texas medical program or Decrim is moving, don't bash your head up against the wall saying, what are we doing wrong? Y'all are doing right. And I just want to finish this part off by saying it is a marathon and not a sprint. And congratulations to some real marathon runners here. And actually everybody at this conference, I'm going to go ahead and say because you're here. I understand. I respect the issues that you face as advocates in Texas. But But people are listening, and people's opinion toward this plant is changing. And with time, you will see that change happen in Austin. So I just wanted to add that to the voices that have been up here. I also want to go to the next question to the panel, and that is that, advocating for medical cannabis is incredibly important. And to some people in the room, that is what they are here for. Okay. But there is a social justice aspect to cannabis. I mean, particularly like in a state like Texas that we're in. A lot of advocates are breaking the law to be able to get the medicine that they need, that they're finding an effective method to be able to do that. So the social justice aspect of cannabis policy reform is intricately part of the work that we do. And whereas I always ask social justice warriors to be just as sympathetic when they're worrying about their messaging with the medical patients, we do the same thing with medical patients that remember that a lot of people can't afford to be part of a medical program in their state. Or in the case of the compassionate use program, maybe it's not meeting their needs. But I know that Austin has done a lot of great work on, particularly he's already hit on it a little bit about some of the local work that they're doing. But I'm going to start with Austin and then work our way down for the criminal justice side of this plant and of this movement and of this conference as well. So Austin, if you expand upon the work that y'all have been doing.
It's hard. It's the best way to explain it. It involves getting out locally and getting out in your community. Like I said, Texas is really, really, really big. It's hard to tackle this entire state, and you're going to tear your head apart trying to do so. So there, for instance, in Denton and San Marcos, back in 2018, 2019, we were working with other local organizations. I know we were working in Denton with UNT SSDP to go to city council and talk about some kind of ordinance that would reduce enforcement for marijuana possession. San Marcos was much the same way with a local organization there called Mano Amiga. And so over time, eventually, after 4 years of doing city council and continue to go back to the ledge and the push to have a ballot initiative came to fruition. And so, getting involved is about knowing when to lead and knowing when to follow. And so sometimes when somebody else is working on an objective or a project that is for the betterment of all of our situations, I believe it's incumbent on yourself to get involved and get engaged and do whatever assets you may have available, whether that's from a financial standpoint, a man-force standpoint, visibility, marketing, whatever. Try to get involved with those projects because if we're going to go, the work at the legislature is going to continue every two years or so. We're not really going to see, I cross my fingers unless there's a special session, but really we have 2 years in between sessions. So we have to stay active. We have to keep this on the front of everybody's mind. And whether that's making a documentary, whether it's going out and decriminal and knocking on doors and joining local elections, just however you can get involved. That's really what's most important. You utilize that experience when we have the opportunity, for instance, in 2025, to go back to the legislature and talk to our legislators.
Piper?
So I just have a little bit here, but I guess I kind of, the issues of decriminalization and medical access kind of have this gray area where they overlap, and then like a big area where they diverge. And I think that it doesn't get brought up enough that they should be separate issues. I see that they should be separate issues. A lot of states where decriminalization has happened, we've seen negative effects in their medical programs and things like that. I advocate for medical primarily because my son is a patient and I have this desperate need to resolve issues for my son. But I also advocate separately. And I think this is what I would like to hit home with people. These are distinct issues. Maybe some people philosophically don't feel like they're distinct issues.
They're definitely distinct.
But we can advocate for both of them distinctly. And I do actively, went with Austin and some other people here for a federal decriminalization advocacy day in April. I see just important to get involved with all of it, whatever you believe in. But yeah.
Yes. For our organization, early on when we were struggling to get enough votes for a lot of this, I still remember going into offices and the first words out of their mouth was, well, if I vote for this, it's just a slippery slope.
Yes, slippery slope.
And that you'll be back here next session trying to get more. And so I made commitments for our organization that, we solely were working only on medical. Now, that being said, we haven't played a big role in doing much in decriminalization, but there are some serious issues that need to be addressed even within the medical program. And that's even people having the basic knowledge of, if you're in that program, what is and what isn't illegal. It doesn't mean you can just, be in the program, have the stuff you got from your doctor, and then have a bunch of other product that you bought somewhere else. Police officers don't know the difference. And I think I still, try and warn people that, you need to treat this like you would any other medication. You put it up after you've taken it. You don't leave it laying around. You need to, all those safety tips, but also at the same time, not advertise it really widely. We're still in Texas. We don't have strong regulation and rules on either side. And I think that puts people in harm's way. But at the same time, we do need to work through these processes. We need to work with DPS and the legislature on families, because I know we have some parents that want their child in teacup, who, if they're going through a bad divorce, that can become a weapon.
Yes.
So we have different things like that. We need to find better ways of doing some of this. But also, I think just slowly reinforcing advocacy-wise to politicians and to law enforcement, because there are some that just aren't going to change their mind, and some judges. But all we can do is try and do our best to put our best foot forward, and get them to see why this is just another medication or something that shouldn't be life-changing if you get arrested.
Just for if anybody is interested, tomorrow is the a breakout session on expungement or expunction is really how it's described here in Texas. But if that is something that very much interests you, I hope that you will attend that breakout session. So I think as we move forward, we're seeing more and more states coming on. There's only 13 states or 12 states now that don't have a robust enough medical program for what Marijuana Policy Project or even Americans for Safe Access would qualify as a medical program. So I will say that I do see a combination of the two, particularly in the states that don't have robust medical programs. And we do consider Texas to not have, the compassionate use program does not meet our standards for what we consider a robust medical cannabis program. So, but at the same time, you have to meet a legislator where they're at. And one of the things that I always do like to say when I hear the slippery slope argument, which you hear frequently, is, there has never been a Republican-dominated legislature that has legislatively passed a cannabis legalization law yet. I hope to be the first to do so in Louisiana, but New Hampshire's going to give me a run for my money. However, but that is a solid argument to use with a legislator that is concerned about this. The ball is in their court. If they don't want legalization, you simply don't vote for a bill that's really no effective reason to hold back a patient from getting life-saving medication. You want to jump in on that?
Because slippery slope came up so much. And yeah, as an advocate, that's something that drives me crazy. So what I like to say in response to that, the slippery slope here is the morality of letting someone continue to suffer because you have that phrase that you like to tell me. And then the other slippery slope is rule of law. Like, I mean, like when we have these circumstances where the law is gray and we're not able to regulate things properly, the slippery slope is people break the law, of course. I mean, we see it happening. And so then you erode your trust for government and law enforcement when you allow that to happen. So those are the two slippery slopes that I see happening in cannabis. And yeah, don't tell me slippery slope that, you giving my kid access to medicine is going to cause the streets to be overrun by crazy stoners, right?
Can I add something?
It's ridiculous.
Sure, Austin.
So because I work in close proximity to compassionate use, there's just so much. The state of Texas has done a disservice to patients because there's such confusion as to what medical cannabis is in Texas and how that is different from what is happening in the hemp market. And so it's justifiable because it is incredibly confusing, especially for those of us who live in North Texas, and we are very close to what I would call the most progressive medical cannabis market in the country in Oklahoma. Not just that, but in West Texas, they have, in New Mexico, they have full-on legalization. And so the access in these different places is so much different than what it is in Texas that it makes even more confusing. Now, in respect to compassionate use, I'll make this statement right now. The patients are taking compassionate use very seriously. The doctors and prescribers are taking this program very seriously. The suppliers, the manufacturers are taking this program very, very seriously. The state of Texas really needs to start taking this issue very seriously because we have 70,000, 80,000 patients, and it's just not right that Texas is lagging behind places like New Mexico and Oklahoma and really the rest of the United States of America.
I want to just finish this off with the fact that, and I think this is important to mention in a state such as Texas, we often hear the terms that we know the inequitable nature of enforcement of prohibition. We're constantly hearing that African Americans are arrested at 4 times the rate of Caucasians, even though they use cannabis in the same amounts. I think everybody's familiar with that statistic. What a lot of people are not familiar with is when they're collecting that data, the Latin population is considered white. So when you look at that number and say that is reprehensible, that it's 4 times, remember, actually, that number is much higher.
Wow.
Real quickly, because we're trying to wrap this up a little bit. If we could just get a quick 1-minute blurb from everybody as to whether or not they're apprehensive or looking forward to the potential rescheduling of cannabis. Chase, I'll drop to you first. Sorry.
At the end of the day, it doesn't, in my opinion, really matter in Texas because Texas would have to pass legislation no matter what. So if and when it ever happens and it gets through all the processes it would need to get there, there's still work that would have to be done at the state level. So if and when it happens, then we'll address it.
Piper?
So I'm hopeful about it. To be honest, what I'm not hopeful about is where people within the cannabis space kind of take these opposing points of view instead of having open conversations about what needs to happen, because I don't think, of course, Schedule 3 isn't the ideal, but can it get us closer to the ideal? I think that there's the possibility that it can, but if we get stuck in this conversation, yes, no, then we don't talk about what really needs to happen, and we're missing those opportunities for being able to advocate for those things. So I don't know. I think personally, what probably needs to happen is a research program of the Attorney General, and I think that there could be a possibility that might happen. Who knows? But we need to be having conversations about like what the best ideas are, so that we can move forward instead of being stuck in. So I'm in this camp or I'm in this camp. I mean, we see politics doesn't work that way. Why are we in cannabis following that model of I'm this in this camp or this camp? Let's talk about the solutions that are going to work for all of us instead.
Austin?
Well, I think cannabis should be federally descheduled like alcohol and tobacco. However, so whether Schedule 3 continues in its current format, the way it's progressing through the federal channels, we're still going to have work to do. Like Jay said, we're still going to have work to do here in Texas. We're still going to have work to do federally. So while it is a monumental step in the direction of overturning about 100 years of marijuana prohibition in this country, it's not going to change what we're trying to do here in the state of Texas. So we just got to keep our heads down. Like Jay said, if and when it happens, we'll be ready to pivot and work along with those regulations and continue to get better legislation and more logical policy in place.
I know my personal perspective is that, and I am a political pragmatist of the highest degree, so you have to excuse me on that. I think that is probably the best that we can expect right now. However, I think if done in conjunction with maybe a Cole Memo 2.0 with a little bit of better federal guidance would be something I would be most happy with. But if this is an topic that interests you greatly, they're having a breakout session this afternoon. And part of that rescheduling will be dealt with there with subject matter experts that I know I'll be in that room. I would like to hear what always interested to hear other people's perspectives on this. I want to thank, okay, we got a couple minutes. I want to thank everybody on this panel for being on here, but I also want to give 2 minutes to each person to do a closing, just a closing segment to the audience. And then we're going to kind of, I hate to say this, but kind of ask people to kind of get out of the room so that they can turn the room for the next breakout sessions once this ends. And I hope everybody can work with us on this, okay? Thank you. It's been an honor to be here today. And I look forward to meeting as many of you as possible over the next 2 days. We'll just go left to right. Austin, 2 minutes just to.
Awesome. No, you love to see it. You love to see your colleagues, your peers, your friends, your community gathering together and serious about change. And this room gives me hope. It gives me a lot of motivation. I see a lot of power players in here, a lot of people who have done a lot of incredible work over the last decade. And so it's just very inspiring to be here. I'm gracious to Heather and the entire team here for putting this event together and continuing to keep cannabis on the front of everybody's minds and keep action right in front of us. And so you can learn more about our organization. If you're following us on Instagram, Twitter is where we're typically most seen on social media. Our website's txcanico.com. Come find me. I got business cards. If you want to talk more about policy, industry, culture, I love having that discussion. I always famously like to say that morning to night, I get to sell and talk about cannabis to patients all day. And then at night, I get to put on my cape and become Weed Batman. So it's not going to change. I appreciate y'all. Thank you.
Piper?
So I'm enjoying socializing with everybody here, my great friends. I think that's one of the great things about advocacy is you build these really special relationships with people who you work alongside with. And, it's a bond that really can't be explained. But I'm going to take this opportunity to promote my my documentary because I think that these are stories that need to be shared. And research shows that sharing personal stories is what brings change in these kinds of circumstances. So that's my hope, to be able to bring these stories to a platform that can affect change, not just federally, but globally. I have a great creative team. My website is potboundmovie.com. And if you're interested in sponsorship, you can add a /sponsorship on there. And we've got product placement opportunities. But yeah, the stories I think are the important thing to convey in order to change this. And, we continue to work together and we can bring the solutions. Oh, and one other thing I wanted to say is, I would love to have conversations with anyone about what should happen. I don't think reschedule or Schedule 3 is really the answer. I think the whole FDA needs reform. So,
Chase?
Well, first, I just want to say thank y'all for having us and for A&M kind of legitimizing this. I think it's an important thing. I got to go to school here for a little bit, so it's kind of nice to come back. But, we got 4 months until the legislative session starts. It's every other year. That's our opportunity. It's in a 6-month period, but really it's more like 4. And we really do need to work to that point. And there's so many new legislators coming on. So wherever you're at in this state, make sure you reach out to both your rep and your senator, find time to meet with them, their staff. Just a quick tip, if you go in and their staff is very young and looks like they're in high school, do not dismiss them. They are the gatekeepers to that legislator. Treat them well and they will treat you well. But at the end of the day, I think we're eventually going to get there. But where we started was we wanted to make this a safe and regulated program. So those who wanted to participate legally and be able to try and find a different way to take care of their healthcare needs had that safe, regulated market. And that's something we have to keep reminding legislators, law enforcement, that the more we push this into the dark corners, which it's never going to go away, let's face it. It's always been here. It's never going to go away. The best way the state can handle this is to create a safe, regulated market on both the hemp side and the medical side, give us all equal playing field, and keep Texans healthy and safe.
yes.
Thank you. I'd like to expound upon that because you hit that great point of talking with staff. Staff is your friend. So is the legislative staff at the Capitol. To the point of the sergeant at arms, become friends with them, talk to them. It is amazing the amount of information that can come your way when they know that you are a partner that they can trust.
All the DPS officers out of
They
there.
love us.
I've had tons of conversations over the years with them. So that's enough.
Now, we have time for 2 possible questions. If you could raise your hand if you have a question, and Heather will come to you. And I would ask that you ask which member of the panel that you would like to direct your question to. Once again, Chase, Piper, or Austin. So,
actually, I have a question for each of you. For each of the organizations that you represent, if you were able to get on the phone or meet in the elevator, the appropriate legislator, the governor, and you had to do your elevator pitch, your 2 minutes, you got 2 minutes with the governor, and it's exactly what you want to say in a way that you want to say it on the issue that each of you cares the most about. I'd be really interested to know what you would say in that circumstance. And I think it would be really instructive for the audience to hear, given the vast experience each of you have advocating for each of your organizations.
Chase, you want to handle that first since you're getting...
Yeah. Anytime I can try and block one of them in the corner, it's... Yeah, I've done that more than once. Push me up this hill while we talk. No, it really is. I think it's that personal that personal story. Find where you can connect with them. I read their bios constantly. I have 2 new policy fellows, and we literally are pasting bios and their pictures up on the wall. Know what you can find within there of that person. You're almost looking at the psychological side of it all. I mean, not all of us went to school to study people's personalities, but figure out who you're talking to. Find that thing that really does make them tick. Start talking about that first. You know, you may only get 2 minutes and you may only get 30 seconds for your elevator pitch, but find the thing that makes them connect with you first, then do it. And that 30 seconds will turn into more. It's not always easy with higher up leadership because you got to dodge all their staff and find that time to do it. But if you can't do it in that moment, find the people who are close to them. They're out there. Look for donors. Look for anyone, your friend who's a friend of a friend that can get you to the right person. Start the relationship that way. But for me, it's always telling that personal story and that I want to go back to work and stay at work. I want to take care of my family, you know, changing the narrative.
So for me, I guess it partly depends on what legislation is being pushed at the moment, how I would approach the conversation, but mostly my son has severe refractory epilepsy. He has been incredibly helped with cannabis, but it's very inconsistent. So we suffer these heartbreaking relapses that are not necessary. We have this backlog on cannabis research. We don't have educated healthcare practitioners. We need to set up the infrastructure for the kind of thing that can help people like my son, so he can have a healthy, independent adulthood. I mean, and really, frankly, we're getting close to the point where, you know, it's scary for me. He's 16. So I've got limited time left to assure that for him. So.
I would just definitely say, understand the politics, know kind of the history behind whoever it might be. For instance, if it's the governor, the governor has been vocal in B2C language, in penalty reduction. He's been vocal in the last 2 elections, saying that he doesn't believe that people should be behind jail cell for low-level marijuana possession. So, these are conversations that you can have. Even with, regular legislators, let them know, hey, this is something the governor believes in. And in fact, our governor has never vetoed a cannabis bill. He signed every single cannabis bill that has come to his desk. So, and for instance, even somebody who we all probably know is Dan Patrick. This man has allowed legislation to get to the governor's desk. So even just talking about those successes from that legislation that he's responsible for in a positive light, I think can be a very effective move. You got to understand, when you go to the Capitol, these are people. These are regular people just like you and me. And, I know there's some political tension that can happen outside of that building, but when you're in that building, there's an etiquette. And so long as you follow the etiquette, respect, and just treat them like you want to be treated, I think that you're going to have a good conversation, and you never know where that conversation is going to go.
Okay. I think that we got one quick one. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, there's always strategy, of course, especially I think more strategy needed in Texas at the legislature. I would never go and lobby for an amendment to something that it would impact hotel occupancy tax without having the hotel lobby there. One thing that I've seen missing, in my opinion, has been rounding up our police associations across the state. And I feel like that's going to be our strongest lobbying arm in whatever respect we go with the makeup in Austin. I just wanted to kind of hear if y'all have any feedback to why that has not been elevated as a strategy, and why we haven't leveraged a lot of what I can see in Dallas specifically, that law enforcement supports for the simple fact of eliminating the black market. But also there's many arguments with the funding sources, et cetera. We have all of our arguments that could be made, but why are we not leaning on who I believe that is going to have the most power to those who are our biggest stopgaps at the legislature.
I wouldn't mind taking that. Well, I think that we have tried those things. And I mean, I personally have. I can't remember his name at the time, the head of the Sheriff's Association. So this is part of the reason why I have a relationship with Troy Nels, is because the Sheriff's Association used to advocate heavily against, and I don't know if they still are planning on doing that, but I've had a lot of conversations with the head of that organization. And my first conversation was in 2015 with Troy Nels, said, I can't remember his name. It said that all of the sheriffs in this association are opposed to medical cannabis. Is that right? Are you opposed to medical cannabis? And he said, no, I support this. And so that's when he wrote the letter to my legislator on my behalf and said he supports this. So, and I also had conversations with that director of the Sheriff's Association and said, I don't understand why you're doing this. And, so I think really where the challenges come in the Texas legislature is, like you said, like 6 months, but it's not truly 6 months. And cannabis is something that they really hesitate to put as a priority in any legislature, but in a legislature where we're dealing with, like in these past legislative sessions, sunset and things that are definitely going to take priority over cannabis. And there's no way that they're going to hear anything. It's just like we're still pounding on the doors and going through all these different avenues. I don't know, with police associations, I haven't really worked much with police associations. So that is something that I think, I appreciate that. And maybe that's something that I'll pursue, but I have worked, trying to get to the Sheriff's Association. And I know that Texans for Responsible Marijuana Policy has also spent a lot of time trying to work through. What was his name? I can't remember.
There is an organization, the Law Enforcement Action Partnerships. They were actually a partner for this. This is a fantastic organization that we are trying to leverage more to deal with law enforcement. But if former prosecutors, former law enforcement that have progressive views on either medical cannabis or just cannabis in general, get them in touch with LEAP and see if LEAP will train them to become effective speakers, effective op-ed writers, work with that. It's going to be a challenging group, law enforcement, but there are ways to try to moderate those views and let them know that it's not a monolithic view towards cannabis, that just like everywhere else, law enforcement want to see this change as well. I think we are out of time. Thank you, everybody. And we will